Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Get Healthy brand webinar. I have to say, I'm super excited for this one because we haven't had a topic on mold. And as Dr. Ashley believes, and so do I, this is the most misdiagnosed and overlooked root cause. So today, she's actually going to be talking about mold as the most misdiagnosed and overlooked root cause, plus key products for mold in the nervous system with DesBio. So I'm so glad you're here, Ashley. Thank you. I know that this was kind of practice changing for you, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So before we get started, though, I just want to take a second just to remind everybody that this will be recorded, and if you need the playback, we will certainly provide that for you. Also, don't forget to register for our upcoming webinars. I'm going to share those with you as well. And we do have some events that we'll be attending, and we'll talk about that as well. So let me just grab my PowerPoint real quick. And of course, we have our very special guest, Dr. Ashley Beckman, who is here. Boop. I always love technology. It's like we're just going to move really slow right now. All right. So obviously, Dr. Ashley with DesBio, but before we move into her incredible topic today, don't forget to register for our next upcoming webinar. This is going to be with Joy Houston. She owns a company called Heal at Scale, and we are going to be talking about attracting your ideal clients with labs. The upcoming June focus, and has been this whole quarter, is the value of clinical testing in your practice. So just having that tangible data that you can share with your patients and clients, knowing how to interpret it. What Joy Houston is going to be doing for us is teaching us how to use a lab out front as what we call a lead magnet and pulling customers in so that you can gain new clients through simple lab funnels. And it's very simple to do. I've done it myself. And I love Joy. She's so high energy. So don't forget to scan that QR code. Also, I just want to remind everybody we are doing fulfillment now for practitioners and smaller brands. So if you're still fulfilling out of your clinic and you just don't want the hassle like I didn't, you can send your private label product to us and we will step in and be your fulfillment partners. So let us take that inventory off your hands. Make sure you scan this, get some information on all of our fulfillment options. And without further ado, Dr. Ashley, if you don't mind taking over the screen, and let's get going on this incredible topic of mold. Thank you for being here.
Of course, I'm excited to be here. All right, so let's get going. All right, so yes, I wanted to just share, especially this is something that changed the whole trajectory of my practice because I just kept seeing it over and over in all of the labs. But we'll dive into that. I'm going to go over a lot of common symptoms that I see and then 5 steps for mold detox and some case studies as well. So mold really was one of the biggest missing links in my whole practice. And it's something that I've gone through personally and that I just kept seeing over and over with all of my clients. So I run a test, the total toxin test or urine mycotoxin testing, and I was seeing it pop up significantly in over 90% of all the labs that I ran. So this was over hundreds of clients. And over the course, now it's been maybe 6, 7 years of doing this. I just see it time and time again as a very strong root cause and very much dismissed by practitioners, definitely medical doctors, but also again in the holistic space as well. Because if you're not familiar with it, you don't know much about it or know how to treat it effectively. So one thing that makes this a little bit difficult to and very prevalent is that over 50% of homes have issues with mold. So you will hear a lot of things about mold too that will basically just make it seem like it's not that big of an issue. So even though there are half of our homes have significant mold, that poses a lot of questions about what do you do about it? Can you still be in the home when you're trying to get better? And it's extremely complex, but there are a lot of practical steps. And we're going to go over that, especially of what you're going to do when you're looking for this in the body. So again, over 90% of all of my total toxin tests showed significant mold exposure. And again, I can't tell you how many practitioners have told my patients, even with a positive test, that it's not that big of a deal. So these are some basic facts about mold. So mold will grow within 24 to 48 hours of a leak in your home. So it's really critical to get something looked at right away if you notice a leak or some sort of water intrusion. Not all mold is visible. Do not use bleach to clean it. If you look on Google, which almost everybody does, they say the first thing to do is clean mold with bleach, but this actually makes it worse. So this is not what you do, but your clients will come to you or they've already done this themselves. 25% of the population is more susceptible to mold toxicity. And so this can make their immune response much worse than some of the other people, even within their own home. It's also very tricky because with mold toxicity, you can have a whole family exposed, but everyone has different symptoms. And this is another reason it makes it very difficult to explain to clients or even other practitioners of how this is happening. The biggest issue with the mycotoxins is that it suppresses your immune system, which allows all these other pathogens to flourish. There's a large connection between Lyme and mold. Heavy metals are often there, parasites, viruses, and other bacteria that are opportunistic. So mold and fungal toxins will move deep into the tissues and they also affect the mitochondria. So you have a lot of different issues with energy levels and fatigue on a very deep cellular level as well. So these are some of the most common symptoms that I see. And again, this list is not complete, but these are the most common ones that I see over and over again. Fatigue, joint pain, headaches and migraines, hormonal imbalances, thyroid imbalances, especially Hashimoto's. All of my Hashimoto's clients have mold exposure and positive tests. Anger and irritability, it often impacts the liver, which allows for a lot of, again, Chinese medicine, we notice when the liver is congested, it can manifest as anger, irritability, and depression. So there are changes in mood, a lot of anxiety, frequent urination, chronic UTIs, chronic candida, digestive issues, especially SIBO and food intolerances, skin issues. A lot of my little kiddo clients that are born into a home with mold, the main symptom that their parents come to me for is eczema. So again, a lot of times you just want to make sure and see what's going on in their environment, of course, in addition to what they're putting on their skin as well, or what they're in contact with. Chronic sinus infections, changes in vision, and reactivation of past viruses, Epstein-Barr, HSV, brain fog, memory issues, and then some people more commonly is weight gain, but you also get the clients that have significant weight loss. These are the most common symptoms that I see in children. So bedwetting after it has already been resolved, recurring infections. So you can think of this with chronic strep. They keep getting sick, they keep getting sinus infections or multiple viruses, ticks, anxiety, outbursts and behavioral issues, OCD, rashes, chronic UTIs, eczema, and ADD and ADHD. And we know how many people there or how many kids are getting diagnosed all the time now with ADHD. Again, I'm always looking for the root causes. And so whenever somebody has a child with behavioral issues, we want to look, of course, into diet and what they're having. But again, are there any of these biotoxins that can be impacting them as well? So when we're looking at a targeted mold protocol, we have a lot of factors to put into play, but we're going to look at drainage support, liver support, using methylated Bs if they're tolerated or needed, glutathione, again, if it's tolerated, binders, minerals, homeopathic mycotoxin detox support, and then symptom support for candida viruses and other pathogens. Again, I see a lot of strep and a lot of Lyme and co-infections as well. So these are the 5 steps for mold detox. I always start with opening up drainage and detox pathways with the comprehensive detox and drainage kit from DesBio. This is a series of homeopathic vials that are going to target different pathways and drainage support. So again, the main thing I always ask the clients, because this is usually the first barrier, is if they're going to the bathroom regularly. So we want to make sure, again, that the bowels are functioning, and then move into like lymph drainage and making sure they're sweating. But those things we can support along the way. Doesn't have to be fully, you don't have to wait until they're sweating to keep starting them and getting them throughout this process. So the other thing we need to do is reduce the exposure to mold. So there are certain types of food that are very high in mold. Probably the number one thing that I always remove from somebody's diet would be peanuts. So peanuts are very high in aflatoxin and it's super toxic. So we want to make sure and just eliminate that. Next up, there's cashews, oats, and coffee. So a lot of people are getting a lot of mycotoxin exposure through their coffee. There are about 5 or 6 brands that check for mold for coffee. There's Danger, Life Boost, Purity, Kion, and then there's some new ones along the way too, but those are the most popular. I always switch the adults over if you can. That's because it's something easy that you could do. Very important again to fix your leaks quickly. You only have up to 48 hours before mold will start to grow. Air filters are a really big important piece of this. So my go-to air filters are Austin Air and Jasper. Jasper is more fancy and you can see it has more of a digital display, but you have to replace the filters every 6 months. Austin Air has been around forever. I have 4 Austin Airs and 1 Jasper, but the Austin Air, the filters last for 5 years. And again, both of these units are metal, so they're not plastic. So these are, again, my top only 2 choices I suggest. Get your HVAC cleaned regularly, at least every winter for sure. And then make sure you're getting on a targeted mold detox protocol. And then cleaning your home regularly. A microfiber cloth and a HEPA vacuum are exponentially better. The microfiber cloth will pick up about 70 times the amount of dust as using just regular cleaning methods. So the other thing is too, a lot of people ask, can we just detox mold out of our body? And unfortunately, most people that I see too, their first exposures are from when they were a child, right? So a lot of us, if you think back to your history, we had homes where there were leaks, or like I lived in Texas and our basement was always flooding. So again, a lot of us are kind of set up in these exposures when we're young, and you can still have exposure and mold that is in your body from when you were a child. So we have to do something very specific to get rid of it. So we're going to support detoxification in the liver, gallbladder, the lungs, the sinus cavity, the gut, the brain, and then I do utilize binders as a part of this protocol. The other thing that's really important too is, unfortunately, mold can go to almost any system in the body. That's why people think, oh, there should be just respiratory issues. We see so many neurological issues with mold exposure. We see so many joint issues with mold exposure. And then again, in the sinus cavity, it's just a very happy place for these microbes to live and stay. And so we have to actively get them out as well. And then, of course, the gut, and then the liver, gallbladder gets very much impacted by trying to process these biotoxins and their waste as well. So one thing that's very important to do is to manage your hormones and your energy levels, because a lot of the different types of mold will attack the mitochondria. Fatigue can be one of the biggest symptoms that someone is dealing with. So it's important to eat an anti-inflammatory or low mold diet. For some people, intermittent fasting can be great. I am somebody that has a lot of very sensitive clients, and they're more on the deficient side, and a lot of women and kids. So I basically want to make sure and have a larger eating window. And I definitely don't want women to go past 10 a.m. and not have started to eat for the day. So I have a different mindset, and that's a little bit because of Chinese medicine constitutional theory. If someone's already deficient and run down and tired, we want to just make sure that they're getting a lot of the good nutrition and they're not waiting too long to feed their body. Sugar is one of the things that we have to get out. A lot of people that are exposed to mold have a lot of chronic candida as well. So honey and even maple syrup don't do well. If you can tolerate it, those would be the only kind of sweeteners that I would suggest. Saunas, yoga, meditation are all very important. Again, saunas can be very beneficial for a lot of people, but generally we're customizing and altering the level of heat and how long they're in there so that you're not overwhelming the system with these toxins and you're not prepared for that. So another big thing, right, is community and doing things every single day that make you happy, right? So these are very important as well. And then moving your body. This is going to look different for everybody. Some people are so exhausted that the only thing they could do is maybe walk down the block or walk down the street. But you do need to work up to making sure that at least your system is moving and you're releasing all of that stagnant energy that gets built up when we have exposure to toxins. So, stress. We all know this is really one of the worst things, and it could be even somebody's main core issue that can make them very sick. So, finding the best way to reduce stress in someone's life that they enjoy. It's going to be yoga, exercise, meditation, writing in a journal, positive affirmations. Again, what kind of media are you consuming? Social media is generally not always all on the positive side. Same with TV. And please stop watching the news, right? That's very hard on our immune system. And getting out in nature, right? So, a lot of these things are free and are very important foundational steps to good health and even for detoxification from mold. So, we're going to go into the specifics of the diet for mold. So we want to make sure and focus a lot on high animal protein if it's tolerated by the individual, good quality fats, lots of colorful vegetables. And again, some people aren't able to eat all of these things, right? Some people might have too many oxalates, but unfortunately, a lot of people will take these things out of their diet because they've read a specific book. And a lot of the labs, if you have high oxalates on your organic acid test, you also want to make sure and see if they're consuming a lot of high oxalate foods, then you can bring that down to a moderate or low level. But if you just remove them, then they're going to have oxalate dumping and they're going to feel even worse. But the bigger piece is that often a lot of the oxalates are formed as a toxic byproduct from mold, it's from too many mycotoxins and too much candida and fungal overgrowth in the gut. So it doesn't always mean you have to remove all the high oxalate foods. If you can tolerate food, I suggest just a couple servings of low glycemic fruit per day. Unfortunately, a lot of the very sweet fruits, right, even though it's great, and maybe if someone is eating sugar, then fruit is the best option as a good swap out for them. But a lot of the things that are very sweet will still feed the overgrowths as well. So we do want to try to minimize those and focus more on berries and kiwi and things like that that are less sweet. And then ideally organic and free range grass-fed meats when possible. So some foods to avoid, again, this is not something that every person would need to avoid, but most people will do better if they do remove gluten. It depends on dairy. Some people can tolerate it fine. Some people can have sheep and goat if it works, and some people cannot have any types of dairy. Soy, seed oils would be removed, processed foods. Fermented foods will usually exacerbate a mold or SIBO flare. Um, Sugar, again, preservatives, alcohol also will make all of this worse. Soda and energy drinks, high glycemic fruits, and then the high mercury fish that we have as well. So again, not everybody will need to remove all of these things, and you need to, meet your clients where they're at. If they're eating traditional full American diet, then just getting them to remove like, soda and alcohol would be a top concern at first. And then you just work with them to see what also is most impactful for their system. So again, these are a lot of the main foods that are high in mold. So some of the markers will show more of a foodborne or water damage building type of mold, but generally there's a lot of crossover. So when people say, oh, this is just from a food type, mold pathogen, there's overlap, so it's not entirely the full picture, but there are certain foods, especially corn and certain grains that will be higher on certain tests, and it often can be from eating so much corn. Corn is a big one because often a lot of people, when they go gluten-free, they eat a lot of corn. So again, coffee is one of the biggest ones that I swap out. Any sort of peanuts, gone generally. That's my main one, if you can get people to just remove anything in regards to mold. Grains, that one's it's just tough. It's basically a storage issue, right? There's going to be some dampness, so there's going to be contamination. Apple products, I think most people have seen that applesauce packs that have been cut open and it's just full of mold. But it's also there's quite a bit of mold that's just infiltrated into the apple process when they're making applesauce and apple cider and apple juice. Cashews, dried fruit. Dried fruit is a big one. Dates are very commonly contaminated with mold. It's always important if you're eating raw dates, just open it up first. They have a lot of black mold in them. So again, just check. And I always tell people to make sure, just visually inspect your food. That's just a big one. So this is not something that you're going to have to remove these things forever. But if these markers are high on your tests or your patient's tests, then you can sometimes whittle this down a little bit and figure out what type of food it could be coming from. So again, a lot of us have had our clients be on low oxalate diets, right? So this is a short-term situation generally while you're working on the bigger picture at large. So the foods that are highest in oxalates: spinach, kale, dark leafy greens, sweet potatoes, beets, nuts, celery juice, and celery beans. So again, you can kind of see these are a lot of foods that are very high in the paleo diet. Again, paleo diet often works very well for a lot of clients. So you just want to see if someone is over consuming these foods, which happens a lot when people are making smoothies and juices and things like that. But again, I want to be very cautious for people to not get so lost in the weeds with high oxalate foods, because it's ideal to have moderate amount and not just fully remove them out of your system. FODMAP diet, again, this is extremely common with clients who have bacterial overgrowth, fungal overgrowth, candida overgrowth. So usually the bigger issue with those different types of diagnoses is that mold is there as well, and there's a large fungal component. So sometimes someone might need to eliminate some of these high FODMAP foods, which the top ones are garlic, onion, cauliflower, apples, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, and beans. But again, it's ideally this is a short-term diet, or at least whittled down to some of the biggest problematic foods for you in these categories. So a lot of times you'll have clients too that are vegan or vegetarian. I generally, my client population does best with higher protein diet, protein and tolerated vegetables and tolerated fruit and some starches. So I generally don't work with many clients that are vegan or vegetarian. I use meat medicinally. This is also something that we learn in Chinese medicine. Meat is one of the things that will get your client, generally, if they tolerate it, better faster. So that is something that I include with my clients. So we have a lot of questions about about mushrooms per se. So it depends. Certain mushrooms are fine. We get a lot of questions again about stevia, xylitol, the alcohol, wood sugars. Again, this just depends on what you can tolerate. Some people, if they have a lot of gut overgrowths, cannot tolerate the wood alcohols at all. So stevia is usually different, but most stevia is not pure. So there's a brand called Stevita. That one's very pure. I know there's a few others out there as well. And a lot of people don't believe, right, that they have any reaction to gluten or dairy. But if you're super inflamed and not feeling well, I think most people can do best with at least eliminating it for about 3 months or longer and just see how your inflammation comes down, or if it does. And eggs, again, it is a top allergen, but most people, it can be a health food for them. Again, it's about rotation. A lot of people are eating things too frequently, and it usually takes about 3 days for something to be eliminated from the body. So eggs, 2 or 3 times a week is generally safe. But again, some people do not do well with eggs because they are in so many foods that we eat. So, as a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, I really love to look at this system and framework for seeing how these pathogens are affecting certain organs and the emotions associated with them. So, TCM is a form of medicine that's been around for at least 6,000 years, and it's just a different lens in which I look through to see what's going on with somebody's system and then the pathogens that they're dealing with. So this is a very descriptive chart, but it basically has all of the different organs. And we have always a paired organ associated with them, a color, an element, a season, and an emotion, right? So when you're looking at things that are affecting, let's just say the lungs, we look to see the paired organ, which is the large intestine. So if someone is coming to you with the chronic respiratory issues from mold, we look and make sure that there's not constipation happening as well. And then is there any sort of repressed or suppressed grief and trauma, because the lungs are called the container of grief, right? So another example would be the liver, and the paired organ is the gallbladder, but the emotion is anger. So if you have a child or an adult who is manifesting with a lot of anger or outbursts, we're going to focus a lot of our treatment or emotional remedies on the liver gallbladder. So these are it's just kind of a broad picture of 5 elements in Chinese medicine. So the main emotions associated with the heart would be joy, overexcitement, and anxiety. And so since anxiety is such a prevalent issue, again, we just want to take note of this and see how does it possibly connect, right? A lot of people too that have mold exposure, palpitations and POTS are often connected too. The liver has to do a lot with anger, depression, resentment. The spleen is worry and pensiveness and anxiety and overthinking. Lungs would be stored grief and sadness. And then the kidneys are usually indicative of very deep fears associated with survival and health. And if anyone has worked with clients with mold, they're very fearful, right? Feel fearful of their home, if they're going to make it okay after this, because there's so many strong symptoms. And I've had so many clients that truly feel like they're going to die when they're living in their home, right, with mold exposure, because there's so many things like their heart is racing, they can't breathe, and they have all of these intrusive thoughts, right? So regulating our emotions, regulating our nervous system, you can look at this through the Chinese medicine lens, or again, just supporting these particular emotions that are associated as well. And the homeopathic remedies are great for that. So we also have a color associated with the organs, and I use these for people to utilize in meditations and visualizations. And this is great for kids and adults. I used to practice acupuncture, and so I would give them a color to visualize during their treatment. But if somebody has some sort of practice, this is great to implement, or especially right before bed or right when you wake up. So for the lungs, if they're having lung issues, white is the color. Heart is red, the liver is green, the spleen is yellow, and the kidneys are black. And it's like a dark blue or black. So we have a lot of different emotions connected to the lungs. And I focused on the lungs because that is one of the most common things that we see. So, and so many people have stored grief and sadness and are have this residual effect, right? So what we want to do again is support the lung, either meridian or channel, through some homeopathic remedies that we have. Now, I would say the other biggest emotional component would be the liver, because most people at some point have a pendulum that swings from either anger or irritability all the way to like sadness and depression, right? At some point in their life, and especially going through mold toxicity. So what we want to do is make sure and address this And it's mostly too because the liver gets overburdened by all of the toxins it's trying to process and the stress. So some of the main symptoms that I see most commonly too would be headaches, red face, dizziness, stiff neck, and then the stiff shoulders that most people have. So I think most people have seen this, but this is the organ clock, right? So you can utilize this. If you have a patient who's waking up at 3 a.m., then you need to focus on the liver, right? So the liver time is from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. So again, that's going to help point to a specific remedy that you can use. So then you can focus on a liver remedy or liver drainage. And again, you can utilize this for certain types of foods that can help significantly. So for example, the liver color is green. So we add in a lot more colors that are green, green apples, leafy greens, arugula, things like that. The other big thing that I always want to point out is, so the detox time starts at 11 p.m. with the gallbladder. And so this is why it's really, really important to be asleep by 11 so that you can start the detox process and you're asleep so that your body is not interrupting that process. So we have a roadmap that I utilize with my clients. So I always start with the homeopathic comprehensive detox and drainage kit. And then if we want to add in specific drainage support for a certain channel like liver, lung, gallbladder, and then adding in nervous system support. So my favorite remedy for this is PTS stress remedy. I use that with most clients if that's a big part of this for them. Some people grief is bigger or resentment, but the most common is the PTS stress. Then I add in fungal support. The MYC combination is the mold combination homeopathic drops. It's very strong, so I just use a few drops to start with. And then if we need to add SSR kits, if we're looking at Lyme, Epstein-Barr, strep, other co-infections, then I will add those in near the end of their protocol. So again, these are the drops. This is the kit. I basically always start slowly because sometimes clients are very sensitive. I just start with a few drops, make sure that that's okay. And I put all of the drops for the day in one water bottle so that someone, if they're a child, they can just take that to school. Or if you're an adult, you just have it on your desk or wherever you are. And then ideally though, then you're working up to about 10 drops 3 times a day. So I put 30 drops into a water bottle of each remedy, and then you just sip it throughout the day, and then you've gotten a really good dosage bottle. The other thing I like to do is make sure that we, again, are looking at the nervous system piece and the energetic component, because this is a really big piece. So these are some of my top remedies that I love: anxious, perfect sleep, elevate, grief, HPA axis. Again, I also love resentment. I see comes up quite a bit. And but grief is probably one of the main ones. And you'll see when you're talking to your clients, you know, what is the most predominant or limiting belief that they might have. So this is probably my most commonly used homeopathic supplement for mold. And I use this with almost everybody because it's very easy, it's strong, but it is very effective. So again, I only start with 1 to 2 drops, and then I only work up to about 5 drops. So this will last a long time, but it's very important because it will address multiple types of mold strains. And so you can see these different ingredients. It has specific mycotoxins, the Aspergillus niger, which is the black mold. And then it also has a lot of supportive homeopathics to help clear that out and clear out symptoms. So these are some additional products that I use. I love the Smart Silver, the liposomal glutathione, Toxifix is the binder, and then liposomal vitamin C. A lot of my clients, if they have any histamine issues, I add in the quercetin as well, which is also very helpful. So these are some case studies. So Carolyn is one of my clients, and a lot of my clients, you know, nobody just has mold exposure. They have quite a few things. So she has mast cells, she has EDS, she has histamine issues, she has POTS very significantly. And she had POTS, and a lot of times people come to you with something else entirely, and then I'm looking to see why is their system reacting this way, right? So she's someone who she couldn't um, she couldn't really do much without having these very strong episodes of very rapid heart rate. She's someone who also, like, anytime she would try a new product or supplement, and sometimes even a food, she would go sit outside the ER and make sure she wasn't going to have some sort of major episode. So we found a lot of mold in her home. She had her home remediated a couple of times because it just wasn't uh, like clean enough for her system to do okay there. And again, a lot of times this happens, right? A contractor comes in, they'd had a remodel, and then they did something not correct in a bathroom, which led to an overgrowth of mold pretty quickly. So she was someone that was very, very sensitive. So we would do drops even just actually on her skin. So she could take the multi-trace minerals in water, she could take the silver in water, but any of the homeopathics for mold, we actually just put a few drops on her skin. And so especially with any sort of sensitive patient, I would only start with one drop, but a normal traditional kind of client, I start with a few and then work up to 5 over the course of a week or so. And the thing that was really good with Carolyn is she was able to tolerate taking more supplements. And she was someone who we eventually got her system cleaned out, and she was able to now she can fly on take her business trips again, which she couldn't get on an airplane. It was way too stressful for her system. But the minerals were a very big piece of this, right? Minerals are a large part of what is required to kind of help with POTS and regulating the heart rate. So these were her results. She had quite a bit of mold. They were in the Most of these were in the red, and we got them down. Again, and this is someone taking like a pinch of a binder and a couple drops topically, and then minerals internally. So we had to go very, very slowly, but it still works. So this is just her testimonial. She was always fatigued. Her heart rate was going up for no reason. We discovered all of this mold that she had. And so we've been slowly kind of unraveling that for her. And she's, again, like I said, she's now able to travel, which is great because she needed to travel for business. So this is another client, Jacqueline, 47-year-old female, Lyme, autoimmune, mold exposure, histamine, bipolar diagnosis. She would get hives and histamine reactions that would come and go. A big thing she has is burning head pain. She was taken off a antidepressant medication too quickly, so she had a lot of withdrawal symptoms. She had breast implant illness, chronic Epstein-Barr, and HSV. Viruses really impacted her quite a bit. She had multiple cavitations and implants, so a lot of dental work. And her main symptoms were headaches, burning head pain, the bipolar diagnosis, electric shock type vibrations in her body, which is also very significant for mold. And again, just emotionally, she was all over the place because she didn't know what was going on. So we ran a lot of testing. She had a lot of mycotoxins, heavy metals, pesticides. We used, she actually was not that sensitive. So we were able to do a really great comprehensive protocol for her. So the drainage kit we've used, myco combination, the minerals, silver, quercetin, glutathione, vitamin C, binder, and then we keep cycling through different series kits for Lyme and Epstein-Barr and Bartonella. So again, she had quite a bit of mold. We got it all down to just the ochratoxin A, which is the most stubborn one. And now, since then, she's clear from the mold. Now we're just really dealing with viruses and Lyme. Now, this is another client, 36-year-old female, Jessica. She has POTS, Epstein-Barr, mold exposure, histamine, hypothyroid. I also think she has Lyme. We just haven't tested. But she keeps getting, more and more diagnoses from different doctors. She has a lot of the vibrations all over her body. She gets hives from cold weather, bathtub, shower, anything hot or cold triggers a pretty big histamine response. and she was extremely exhausted, couldn't play with her son, couldn't walk up the stairs without getting out of breath. And now she is able to play with her son, and her POTS is much more under control. So again, she was very sensitive. So we were doing a drop or two of the mic combination, breathe drops, PTS stress, trace minerals, and smart silver. We nebulized the silver with her quite a bit. And then she's on a binder and then an organ supplement for energy. So this is JJ's testimonial. But yeah, she now walks 7 miles multiple times a week now and walks her son to school, which is great. So I always use the homeopathic kit and the MYC combination with my clients that have mold exposure. Very important to have the emotional support during the detox, because most people are in a very heightened state of stress. And there's also something called mold PTSD, right? So you really are very fearful. A lot of people are fearful to go on vacation, fearful to take a trip, fearful to travel. So we really have to address that and make their body feel safe again, right? That's a huge, huge factor. So these remedies are really very helpful, and a lot of people notice it, right? Homeopathics are gentle but effective. So thank you so much. I know there's a lot to cover, but um, this is also, you have a special if you want to place an order, and here's the code. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Awesome, awesome. So, we kind of practice the same. I'm big on the emotional part and the PTSD with, uh,
Yeah.
all of the chronic illnesses. I think, you know, mold's been overlooked, but it hasn't been a problem. I think it's been exacerbated in the last probably 10 years with the onset of new things being introduced in the
Mm.
health world, and also I think the mass exposure of EMF.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on EMFs and mold, funguses, etc.?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I know that there was this study. I think it's Dr. Klinghardt maybe who was talking about it, that it exacerbates the growth of mold. So I mean, any of these things that are so powerful, right? That are just in our environment on a day-to-day basis. I think they have such a huge impact, unfortunately, right? And so there's a lot, or there's not always a lot we can do, right, to shore up our exposure to EMFs.
Hmm.
And what we can do, I think we need to do, because it's unfortunately very impactful.
Well, Desbio has an EMF support, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, I know a lot of us have different things on our phones or turn off our Wi-Fi and things like that. But again, some people, if you live in an apartment complex, right, it's so much Wi-Fi. It's just everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and even just big cities, right? I'm in Los Angeles, even though I'm out far, unfortunately, places put the towers on schools and close. It's problematic for sure.
Yeah. So you talked about mycotoxin testing, and I
Yes.
just want the practitioners to understand the difference between mold testing and mycotoxin testing, if you want to go into that. And then what is your favorite mycotoxin test? Do you prefer
Sure.
urine or blood? So just get
Yeah.
into the nitty-gritty because we like testing here as well.
Oh, sure. So urine or mycotoxin testing is a test to see what is in your body at this time. Unfortunately, the testing will not tell you if this is, from a current exposure or past exposure, unless you're doing repeat testing and you know that you see it, either, increasing or decreasing, and there was an exposure. So I choose Vibrant America urine mycotoxin testing. It checks for about, I think it's 31 markers versus 12 or so from Mosaic. So I use the more comprehensive one. And there is my Myco Lab, which is a blood test that you can do. Some of my clients choose to do it. I don't do it all the time. I usually start with the urine testing. and then you can test for your home, right? So testing in your home is a whole other thing. There's basically little petri dishes, which go in order of least expensive and least reliable. So the little petri dishes that you just set out, inexpensive. You can get it sent off to a lab, not that reliable, but it could be your first place to check, like under a bathroom sink or something, right? Or in a laundry room.
Right.
But
There's also the have you heard of the dust test?
yeah,
So,
so dust test would be next.
yeah.
One is something that I do suggest. That's what I would go with. And then air samples you can do, but it will miss what is there. So basically, you do not rely only on an air sample test. And then the ideal situation is have somebody come out that is a mold inspector and then do a thorough visual exam, and they will do air samples, dust tests, and swabs, and then again, the visual inspection, they know what to look for as well, but then they're testing and they'll do control samples.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, I like urine better. So if you guys are listening and you have the Avexia account or you have it integrated with your Get Healthy store, you could literally bundle up the My Myco Lab
Mhm.
mycotoxin test, which is going to
Yep.
test for that. If you wanted to send out initially to your clients and patients the dust test,
Mhm.
that company, what's nice about them is the test itself is created and developed by the gentleman who also owned the remediation company based on the EPA standards, which not all companies do. Um, and so when he developed the dust test, he can also come back, interpret it for you, and tell you what to look for in a remediation company. And his company's all over the United States, but if you don't choose his, they tell you what to look for. And then
Yeah.
they send you back to the practitioner for the protocols such as this to put in the comprehensive, the Omni Cleanse, which is what I start with, and then the Myco combination, which is big. So this has been fabulous, Dr. Ashley. Thank you for sharing all this. So if you guys want to go check out these products on the catalog, you can certainly add them. I pretty much start out with the comprehensive detox on almost everything that I do with clients.
Yep.
I think it's gentle. It also has that, nutrition backer that's going to help the body be able to detoxify well. It supports the liver. It's been one of the best, most comprehensive detoxes that I've used throughout my practice years, probably for the last 12 years that I've been working with DesBio. So, um, I really haven't found much to surpass it ever, the way that it works in the body. And it's great for kids. So, they can do it and it's awesome. So make sure you check out the Omni Cleanse, which includes the shake and the capsules, or just the comprehensive pack, which is just the homeopathy. So, kind of do it your way as a practitioner. Make sure you go and get your discount with DesBio and establish your wholesale account. Very simple process. You put in your name, your address, your credentials, all the fun things, and then you can utilize your code if you don't already have that wholesale account. And if you don't have them on our catalog onto your store, please do that because we have the entire line of DesBio products. And Get Healthy, besides DesBio, is the only other technology to carry their product line. So we're very honored to be partnered with you. So thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I've used Just Bio products. It was one of the first ones. I was trained as a classical homeopath first. And so I've used homeopathy and Just Bio, I think, since 2002. So it's so gentle but very effective. And that's always great. And it's nice to have something that you're not concerned about that interacts with medications and things for all ages.
Because that's a question that we get. And I also love homeopathy too for people that do have MCAS or seem to be very sensitive because you can just very gently work it up. You can adjust the protocols. I have some difficult people like you do. And you start them out too much and they're like, oh, I don't feel well. It's like, okay, we'll just back it down. No problem. And because it's homeopathy, it works with the body. It doesn't overwhelm the system. So all great things. So thanks, Ashley, for being here. Any last words you want to leave with our practitioners when they utilize this protocol?
Yeah, I'm just go slowly again, right? Much easier to add more than backpedal and try to deal with someone not feeling well, which goes for herbs and supplements too. But um, it's always surprising to me how little you need of homeopathics to instill change.
Absolutely. I've been using the testosterone. That's my new love.
Oh, I
So
haven't. I
had
love
some low
that.
testosterone levels, so I've been combining that and it's working really well. And I can tell when I don't take it. So
Yeah, their hormone combination I love too. Yeah.
yep, I have that on my desk too. I'm in that phase, Dr. Ashley. I'm in that
Well,
phase.
yeah, so am I.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us here. Have a great day. Make sure that you add those products and go get your discount. Thanks, Dr. Ashley. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.